Things are going to start happening to me now.
You've done all the reading. You're a scholar. You're a professor. You've done all the reading. You've done the intellectual heavy lifting.
More or less, eat shit and die.
You wouldn't know a fact if it begged you all night long.
Want to give the wrong impression because I am very high.
Ran up behind him with a hatchet. Smash, smash, smash. Yeah.
Care. I'm a libertarian. What I'm getting is,
did you vote for Joe Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Joe Jorgensen. That was the perfect answer. Thank you.
Oh boy, the day has come. This is Tyler Yonke. Welcome to the Libertarian Podcast Review. I've got the self-proclaimed, and we're going to dig into this just a little bit, watcher. I'm not a big fan of people who have self-anointed themselves, whatever, with a nickname. I almost feel bad that I've perpetuated it, but Marc Clair, welcome. Watcher?
Fair enough. Hello. What's up, Tyler?
I remember you were on Dave's show and you called yourself the Watcher. Was that the first time it came to being?
I think so. Yeah. I think that was around the time that I was kind of thinking of that name because I'm a total comic nerd. I actually have another comic podcast. We can talk about whether that's a waste of time or not later. May or may not be. But no, and also I think that was around the time that the What If series from Marvel had just maybe wrapped up, and that was kind of a plot of that show too, where the Watcher is this bald-headed alien, looks exactly the opposite of me, and he watches things that happen in various realities, and he's pledged to not intervene. And then, but sometimes things get crazy, and he's pretty powerful. So if he has to intervene, he does. And he did, and that was kind of on my mind. And I thought that's kind of like how I see myself with the libertarian stuff, with the libertarian movement. I've had this podcast for like 8 years. Usually it's not me expressing my opinions. Usually it's me bringing on someone else, trying to get their view out there. They see the world, where they see the philosophy, their best strategies, whatever it may be. And I've always kind of been like the independent moderator. And yeah, I guess that was an analogy for how I've decided to, I guess, be more than just a moderator and mediator in the last maybe 6 to 8 months.
Okay, so I'm looking at you now. Maybe we'll call you Babyface Marc Clair instead.
I made a heel turn, but now I have a baby face.
Well, look, so I do family law, and this, you might not like this comparison, but oftentimes you get divorced. My clients, they're like, hey, I've been held under the thumb for so long. I'm going to speak my piece, and now I'm going to do. And that maybe that's you. Have you been held under the thumb? Do we need to talk to Brian and John about all this?
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we do.
Right.
Maybe we need some. Maybe we need counseling. Maybe that's all we need.
Right. Why don't you? No,
I just. Yeah.
Oh, go finish that. If that even.
I don't think anybody's held me under any thumb at all.
Okay.
But I did feel like it did feel a little bit liberating to just kind of like, in a very imperfect, very not exactly how I want to say things, in a very let's just let this shit fly off my tongue kind of way. It was nice to sort of do that podcast that you were nice enough to do a libertarian pod review of and get that all out. So and I've gotten an awesome response.
So what? Look, why don't you give your details here of kind of even why you're on my show. You reached out to me, which
great
I appreciate.
Question. I'm asking myself that already.
Right. Well, there's been some bad ones here. So first of all, on my episode 16, I reviewed your Lions of Liberty, and I'm somewhat new to the libertarian world. I'm 51, but I've been involved as a GOP person since my 18 years old. So politics are not new, but the liberty side was. So when I switched over and I found your podcast, it was wild. It was liberating. Okay. So I did a deep dive on it, and you guys seem to appreciate it. And I really appreciate a lot of the people in the liberty sphere who have been super nice to me. And Pete came on the show. Clint, you are here now. But why did you even reach out to me? Now, I'm not saying to boast my boat here at all, but this was something you came to, and you obviously made statements. And like you said, you're kind of walking your way through there. I don't know how much you had even written this down, or was just stream of thought going on.
No,
but why did you
zero? Right, there were zero notes. I hope that came across.
Well, this is what attention seekers do. So
yes, I know.
no. So no, first of all, you did a podcast. I said I would take a look at it, and you were nice enough to even tweet out before you had looked at it, which was very brave. If you saw my open there, I have not always been nice to everybody that's been here. So why did you want to even keep talking about this?
Just for the attention, I love attention. Everything I do is for my own personal attention and for increasing my profile. No, but I mean, I think I tweeted something like half jokingly, but once you did it, I was like, all right, it's not half jokingly anymore. Are we going to get a Liberty Pod review about this one? Because I did enjoy your breakdown, and it was enjoyable to listen to your breakdown, and also cringe for me just because it's so hard to listen to my podcast I've done like a year ago, let alone like some of those really old ones like 7 or 8 years ago. I think the hardest part to hear, you reviewed this clip from an episode I did about Bitcoin, and I remember the guest was like, "Oh, it's like 19 cents or $19 right now," and it brought back this horrible memory of how I remember hearing that. I was like, "Oh, $19, like maybe I should buy one of these," And I remember like this, but this is before Coinbase or like any of these exchanges. Like it was like work to buy Bitcoin. And I remember like going on some websites and like trying to figure it out, and like I just like gave up, and to this day, I just wish I put in whatever extra amount of effort it would have been to buy, like, I don't know, 5 Bitcoins at $19.
Right.
That would have been nice. So that's my only negative thing I have to say about your podcast review. No, but I mean, when I saw that you did it, I was like, when I say fair, I just mean, look, I mean, I enjoy your sense of humor. I think you have a great sense of humor. I think that's the best way I'd like to approach some of the stuff, is with a little bit of humor here, because I'm not going on the offensive, like, fuck you guys, I hate you guys are assholes, to go to hell. I want to still have fun with you guys, with everybody in this sort of liberty space. And I think, I share, in my view, a kinship with everybody involved, especially with the Mises Caucus people, because those are the people that I've most felt aligned with in, sort of how these ideas should be portrayed. Much like the Mises Caucus, I don't want to hear Bill Weldian and Gary Johnsonian views of libertarianism. But at the same time, I guess at this juncture, I care a little less about how people view libertarianism than what I can actually do in my own life and the lives of others to actually have more liberty, which aren't necessarily the same thing.
Completely. So I didn't, like I said, you didn't have to talk about my humor, which is fantastic, of course. But even the reviews that I like to do, I've started out, and I was at some point I was going to be a little bit more harsh, and then I'm like, you've got a lot of pushback on that. Maybe I just do it in a better way. And that was when I was first listening to your podcast that morning. I'd seen all the interaction on the Facebook group. And then I saw you were tweeting, and I'd seen your comments, with Pete and Dave, because I'm a prolific podcast viewer, watcher, and listener. And then you came on with this, and I was like, oh, this shithead, I'm gonna have to. And so I'm listening to it. And my first,
I laughed so hard. Honestly, my favorite part of your review was just trying to get me to my point, which is like half the show. It's like it kept me like, oh, well, I guess it's not there yet. But
well, so when I'm first doing it, I'm just like, I started yelling, and I took screenshots with my phone as I'm listening, because I'm like, it's 12 minutes in, and then like finally it's 30. So I'm glad you enjoyed the humor on that, because for me I wanted to make a joke about that. But when you took it in its entirety, you understand why you were so concerned and you wanted to do that. Do you want to break some of that down for the audience that is for some reason not even paying attention?
Yeah, so I guess I'll
is that a fair description of it?
What's that?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Trying to make those jokes again, huh? Yeah, I think that, well, I don't know. How far back do I want to take it? I could do a full recap, but I kind of do that in the podcast. But just specifically for this particular critique, because I think, and I guess that, like, when I look back a little bit now, I can see how some people, if they're looking at the micro and haven't seen, or maybe haven't really followed me much and haven't seen my progression and my shift over the last 6 to 8 months or 2 years in a greater way, that it might seem like this out of nowhere thing or something. But and I do see too, like, okay, I had Andrew on my show. I know that makes you cringe. I had Andrew on my show like a week prior, and then I came out with this. So maybe from some people who are just looking at it at a surface level, they're like, this guy had Andrew GOP Mises on a show, and now he's critical of the Mises Caucus, and take that as one package. And it's really not one package. It's actually just kind of a coincidence, to be honest. Like, I recorded the interview with Andrew back in, I think, March. I recorded like 5 or 6 weeks of interviews and just kind of laid them out as I was traveling and doing other stuff. So it just kind of so happened that I had to release an interview with Andrew about the GOP Mises Caucus right at the same time that I happened to see this interaction that set me off in the Mises Caucus Facebook group. So I guess I can see how some might be like, oh, he's just here to promote the Mises GOP. I'm not here to promote any one particular person's strategy. What I did with Andrew is something I've done, as you pointed out on your show, something I've done for years. I have people on. I ask them about what they're doing. I give them the time to explain it. I ask them follow-up questions, and I let them paint the best picture they can of themselves, and then I let everybody else decide what they think of it. So I'm no more pushing Andrew's GOP Mises Caucus strategy than I am pushing anything anybody else has ever said on my show, than I am even pushing a Mises Caucus strategy or this or that. The timing just happened that way. But, in fairness, I guess I could see how some people might take it as one package and take it that way. So fair enough. But what had particularly set me off in this instance, and I had really only spoken about the Mises Caucus stuff a couple of times on other podcasts when I was asked. Right. So I was asked on Pete's show, and I wasn't even planning to talk about it on Pete's show that day. Like, I just came to Mexico recently, and he wanted to talk about me leaving my job, leaving Los Angeles. And he segued into that. And all I did was answer, honestly. That's really all I did. And then Dave had me on not long after that. Obviously that got a lot more eyes and ears on it because Dave has a huge show, and pretty much the same thing. He just asked me about it, and I gave my opinion. So that's all I've really ever done for the most part. Is give my opinion on other podcasts to other podcasters. I'm not really sure I've even done that too much on Lions Liberty. I don't really think I have. Maybe it's worked its way into conversations, but I haven't really just like gone out and gone on an anti, and I'm not anti-Mises Caucus. I'm not anti the people. I'm not anti anybody. I fucking love the Mises Caucus people. That's why I bother. I wouldn't bother to tell my enemies that I think they're on the wrong path or that I think they could improve their life. I don't want my enemies to improve their lives. Fuck them. I don't want them to have more power or political influence or have a better life at all if they're trying to actively subvert my life. So I would never talk to my enemies in that kind of way. I would only talk to my friends in that kind of way. Let's see. So what particularly set me off was, again, and I will admit, I'm just as guilty as some of the things I criticize as anybody else. So what set me off in this particular instance was there was a screenshot posted in the Mises Caucus group. I won't say who posted it, but it does rhyme with Mac Floyd. And he posted this screenshot of a guy who I've known for a while, a Lion Liberty supporter. This guy, Steven, he just tweeted something. Dave Smith and Tom Woods brought me into the Libertarian Party, and at Mance Raider at P tagged Pete and said Pete is pulling me out. And part of the screenshot was Marc Clair liked this because I liked the tweet. So that was part of the screenshot, was showing
Let's stop right there. So why did you like that tweet?
Why did I like the tweet? Because I like the tweet. What
about it would do you like? Oh yeah, sure. I'm glad that's happening. Or were you just liking it to find it later?
I mean, likes are not always endorsements, but this like was an endorsement. I think I would say, like, because it's not. Again, I haven't like gone out of my way too much about it. Like when asked, I give my opinion, and my opinion has generally come to the idea that yes, I think participation in third party politics, if you're looking to change things in some way, like if you're actually looking to improve the current situation of yours, is a fallacious effort, is a foolish effort. That's just my thought on it. And I would agree that, so yeah, if I see someone who excuse me, if I see someone, especially someone who's been a supporter for years, that I think is taking a path in a more positive direction, whereas I think that participation.
Let me ask you this: how do you know his new direction is positive?
I don't. That's a good point. He might be leaving the LP to go do heroin or something. So,
well, who said that's not positive?
I know that's not positive. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he might be leaving the LP to do terrible things. That's possible. Maybe he's using his time in a worse way.
So I don't mean to necessarily like divert here, but some of these things, I mean, it's to kind of get us to what. And then, by the way, this was totally legit, which was, I'm like, what kind of horrific issues does Mark have for this? And then it was a like tweet. And that's actually the best part of this, where I was like, okay, I could take this at face value. I can walk my way through this. I give Mark, his due on this and be just fine. And so Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm not upset about anything, to be honest. Some people think I'm upset. I'm not upset. I mean, I was annoyed that at some of the comments, for sure. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But so here, and I saw, so under that post, there were some people, like somebody made like a Marc Clair like this with a googly eyes. And then like some other people were like commenting under there about like what I've been saying or whatever. Like, I don't really remember those specific comments, but I thought to myself, actually at the time, I thought, well, this is stupid. Who cares? I like to tweet. Well, then I also thought like, oh, maybe it's just that I haven't really explained myself well. Maybe I haven't really like laid anything out in, not that I ended up doing that. I didn't really end up doing it.
Did that work out?
Not necessarily, but it kind of worked out. I mean, it got attention, which is, as we know, is all I'm after here anyway.
We'll get to his questions too, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So I thought to myself, oh, and I had no reason to think it wouldn't be received well. I guess that's why this kind of spiraled, is that the way you read my whole initial post. Yeah. I didn't think I was saying anything crazy. I thought I was just saying, hey, I've been pretty critical lately, but maybe my thoughts haven't gotten out there, because I thought maybe some of the negativity from Mark like this tweet is maybe they just thought like I'm just going and hating on them or something. So that's why I was like, maybe I should just do a podcast and talk to these people directly, since I'm in their private group. Maybe I shouldn't be. I don't know. I was in the private group before I was never a member of the Mises Caucus, and I was invited to come into the group and participate. So I don't see why I should remove myself, but if the admins don't want me to remove myself, but whatever, some people think I should. So my idea was, I'll take the honest questions and honest feedback and honest criticisms from the Mises Caucus, and I'll just respond to it in a podcast form, because that's how I prefer to communicate anyway. Because as we've seen, Facebook comments and tweets don't necessarily portray the exactly what you want to portray. So that was my idea behind the post. What ended up setting me off and having me do a podcast that wasn't at all like the sort of collected reasoned sort of take I wanted to give was again, I'm as guilty as anybody, but it was just the string of comments just going bonkers. And they kept going. Like I responded to that. I did that podcast responding to a bunch of the comments, but there's like 100 more after that. And it just dawned on me that I'm not going to use like cult-like mentality, because I think, and I know Hody Johns did a whole like thing about that in a debate with Clinton. I would not call the Mises Caucus a cult, but there is a little bit, and everyone's guilty of this. Like this is kind of a nature thing, defensiveness around the tribe and around the strategy. So the idea of me, and maybe I'm seen as like an apostate of some sort, because I was enthusiastic about it in 2016, 2017, 2018. That's true. We can support however we want. I was never a member, never paid dues, but I was enthusiastic, and I will, if that qualifies as supporter, then I'll say I was a supporter. That's fine. Allowed to change my opinions over time. And so but it really just hit me like the knee-jerk reactions I was seeing when I hadn't even said anything. Like I didn't say anything. I literally didn't say anything. I just said, hey, I'd like to give a more thought out like critique and say why I'm saying these things. And it is what ended up happening, because I mean, the people that get it, and the people that don't. So, and I think the people that don't want to, because they feel so attached to this thing that they have put so much time and effort into, which I get. And I get it feels personal when you've invested so much of your personal life into something. So I get it. It's a human reaction. But it really just struck me as like, I can't even believe some of these over the top responses here. And that's why I was like, and I was doing a dumb thing. I was reading the Facebook groups, reading the Facebook responses, and we can address your maybe one of the first questions here that was brought up in the review podcast was he drunk?
Well, that's my first. I have some other questions here, and they're blatant here. They're good ones. Mark, why do you engage in drunk podcast rants?
Why not?
Okay.
In fairness, we've been doing, libertarians and living rooms drinking liquor is an old school Lions Liberty show. So we've been drinking and ranting from day one, really. So,
by the way, I saw on Twitter that morning, and I bookmarked it so I could find it and listen to it as I was heading to work. And that was the first comment. Someone's like, and by the way, this was my negative feeling towards you already on this one, which was, he's like, oh, he's drunk podcasting. And you're like, whatever, dude. And I'm like, well, why are you putting out a podcast? Then someone's criticizing it. And then you're like, I'm over it. So, and then I listened to it and I was like, oh, well, you're kind of drunk, but you're not. And it was fine. But so that's the first one. Were you drunk, Mark?
It depends on how you define drunk. I said at the beginning of the podcast that I had 3 drinks prior to, in the 2 hours preceding that. So if that makes me drunk, then I guess I was drunk. I would say I was like a little tipsy, but not drunk. Like, to me, drunk is like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm out of control. Like, I can't believe I did that. I have no regrets. I listened to it back and I was like, I could see I was a little tipsy, but I wasn't drunk or like saying things I wouldn't say again. So,
well, let's
take it for what you want.
Can you say Angela McCardle?
Angela McCardigal? No.
Yeah, there. Okay.
Angela McCardle.
There you go.
Yeah, I butchered her name so many times, which is funny because she's like one of the few people I was talking about that I actually know in real life, and I've met in real life a number of times, and I absolutely know her real name, but I was stumbling over it for some reason.
So one of my thoughts, and I mentioned this in the review, there was, if someone was coming after Ron Paul, which like Nick Sarwark did, and he was saying some ridiculous stuff about him, your reaction might be, now this is a group, it's not a Ron Paul, but it's Mises. Okay, so is there any validity to? And I think that's some of it, and then there's more. The other part I had, which was, and I want your input on this one, your criticism, which you should be flattered, means much more than Hody John, Hudak, or some Martha Boyner, whomever, right? I mean, do you acknowledge that, right?
I like to think so. I mean, yeah, that's kind of part of that's kind of part of my shtick, I guess, on this, is that maybe my opinion should matter because I'm not like them. I'm not coming from that perspective. I'm not saying the Mises Caucus are a bunch of racists and bigots and they're in a cult and no, these are the people I identify with the most. And if anybody's followed my podcast for the last 7 or 8 years, the body of work would, I just think, surely present that idea that I'm pretty closely aligned with you guys overall, or you guys, those guys, whatever, however you want to put it.
But you can also see where you can understand maybe where people were like, oh, then, hey, it means more, which means it also means more to our enemies in a sense, right? In the Libertarian Party. How do you feel about that? Where it's a inside the family witness against you.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, I think it's funny too. Now that you said that, I don't know if I want to admit this, but I will admit this. Nick Sarwark retweeted my podcast about the Mises Caucus, I'm pretty fucking sure he didn't listen to it, because literally everything I would say negatively about the Mises Caucus path would apply to everybody in the Libertarian Party, more so for pathetic losers like him. Right. So it's funny, but it is funny that some people kind of take it that way. But again, if I was going after Tom Woods or Ron Paul or Dave Smith and character assassinating them, I would expect just a mountain of horrific backlash. I have not gone after a single solitary person except maybe Mac Floyd. I'm critical of the act. I'm critical of the strategy. I'm critical of people that are putting their time into third-party politics over time into themselves specifically. And maybe that doesn't apply to everybody. It certainly doesn't apply to everybody. But that's my message. So if I'm critical of a strategy or even what a group of people are doing, sorry, I'm not attacking you, the human being. Maybe it feels that way if you've invested so much time and effort into it. But it's kind of like, I mean, I know the feeling because I know what people could say just about libertarians in general and how defensive I might have gotten in the past over that, just over the ideas and the smearing of the ideas. But that's also the way I felt like I got attacked in the comments. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like when people just say a bunch of nonsense and they have no idea what they're talking about. And then I have 3 drinks and respond to it. This is what that's like. So,
okay. So some of this we can dig in. Is there anything you wanted to specifically clarify before I start asking you questions? Like, you used to work for the Disney Corporation. How many kids did you groom while being employed by the mouse?
I've not worked for the Disney Corporation.
I thought you worked for ESPN.
I've done freelance work for ESPN.
Oh, see, what a fucking liar.
I didn't even think about the fact Disney was the parent company.
Okay, fine.
Then I suppose in a small way, yes, I'm responsible for the grooming of your children.
Okay, no, is there some things you wanted to specifically clarify before we went down some of these other things?
Well, I don't know what things you had planned. I think I did have one thing I wanted to clarify, and that was the thing with Pete saying he would send the Bitcoin. Yeah. If you found me saying to vote GOP, I think was the bet.
Yeah.
And I did want to clarify actually one thing in there, because you pointed out one part of the podcast where I had mentioned hearing when I did the debates with Eric Brakey versus Dave Smith and with Tho Bishop versus Dave Smith. And I said that I was finding them being more persuasive on that topic. So that perhaps, I guess, could be construed as voting GOP. So let me just clarify that. When I was talking about now in individual cases, maybe I agree, but like, for example, Eric Brakey's running for state Senate right now. I love Eric Brakey, and you'd be a fool not to want him to be your state senator. So in that particular case, I say vote GOP if Eric Brakey is the one. I'm talking about the person though, not the party. But yeah, I mean, really what struck me about the crux of their arguments against Dave was more the futility of third-party politics, the futility of libertarian party politics, and really how that can really beset you against others that would be potential allies in your community by putting yourself in this third rail that is not right or left, and that effectively removes you from a lot of this conversation if you're trying to get something done locally. And that part of the conversation, I made sense to me, is what I'm saying. But that's not the same as me saying, hey, everybody, go vote GOP. That's the solution, because that's certainly not what anybody is saying.
So if the LP is a useless endeavor, do you believe that voting is the solution to avoid politics?
Yeah, I mean, that is more my message. Like, I'm not saying everybody should avoid politics, because politics is going to keep existing whether or not we do first. I would say as a matter of priorities, and I say this again, everything I say is man in the mirror. I'm talking to myself as much, or maybe more so in a lot of cases, than other people here. And when I talk to myself, I do it because I know that other people are like me, and other people were or have been or are in similar situations to me. So that's who I hope to resonate with. And if what I say doesn't resonate with you, then maybe it just doesn't apply to you, and maybe that's fine. Yeah, basically, I would say that they were a little more persuasive just when it came to discussing whether the third-party route could bear fruit or not. But my overall message has not really been a political one per se. My message is like, don't waste time. My message is that we look at the world around us now. And you mentioned something too in your review, like, you saw a lot of draconian stuff going on before too. And just to push, I mean, I agree. Like, yeah, our whole system is draconian, and we've had a bunch of draconian stuff that's been sort of put in place over time, over the last 100 years, that a lot of stuff that might have seemed like horrific 100 years ago, like, oh, they take all your money, they take all this tax money before you even get the paycheck. Like, that's probably seems like the most draconian thing ever. And we just all do it and go along with it because the pot has been boiled, so to speak. But I do think that there is a significant difference between a lot of what we've seen in the normal world, the normal draconian stuff, and the last 2 years, specifically the mass compliance of most people we know, including most libertarians, including most Mises Caucus people, to this entire regime. I don't want to say most, because I don't know numbers. A lot of people in the Mises Caucus and a lot of people in the liberty movement were very easily complying with everything along the way. Masks, vaccine mandates, whatever. This stuff didn't get countered by libertarians in any kind of political way, or Republicans in any kind of political way. I'm not making a political statement as much here, but it did surprise me, I guess. I was disappointed and somewhat surprised at how fast many in the libertarian movement and many in the Mises Caucus rolled up the sleeve to get by. And I'm not saying that to shame people and say what a fucking loser you are for doing that. I get most people that did it probably did it because they felt they had to, or had their job under threat and were afraid they wouldn't be able to pay their rent and feed their family. I get it. But if that applies to you, you have no business trying to go to Reno, Nevada for anything, let alone a Libertarian Party convention. And I also did something on Twitter about GoFundMe's to go to Nevada. Yeah. And that's not referring to any one person. I already talked about this with Josh, and some people thought it was just an attack on Josh Smith. I donated to Josh Smith's GoFundMe for Disneyland, by the way, because I like Josh and I think it was awesome that he wanted to take all his kids to Disneyland. So I'm not against people even doing GoFundMes for anything. My real point, and the reason I mentioned GoFundMes is because I was told by a number of people, and I believe that has turned out to be correct. There are many, many GoFundMes right now to get people to Reno, to send people to Reno as delegates. And I guess my point is, if you're at a point, like I said, what I'm saying might not apply to everybody. Maybe you're well off and can afford to do all this. But if you can't afford a trip to Reno, Nevada, then you probably can't afford to lose your job and not eat next week. Then, therefore, you are probably one of the people that shouldn't be focusing on third-party politics. That's my point of view.
By the way, I don't disagree with that at all. This is why I couldn't really take your whole episode and just like slam everything. And by the way, I was thinking about this the other day, my comments where things have been more draconian. And I was like, okay, Tyler, what actually were those? And I couldn't come up with it. So
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue that we haven't had draconian shit going on forever. Right. But I think there's something else when you see the mass compliance of your friends and neighbors, including your Liberty people, including a lot of your Liberty people. So, and maybe the mass compliance from the Liberty folks is because they were just not in a position to feel that they could not comply. Heck, I wasn't in a position to feel like I couldn't comply, but I also knew there's no way in hell I was not going to live the principles of bodily autonomy. That's a non-starter. Like, if you're not going to protect that for yourself, then how are you going to protect it for your kids? How are you going to lead an example like that for your kids? And that bothered me a lot when I saw it throughout the Liberty movement, throughout the Mises Caucus particularly. And I think if those same people that had to roll up their sleeve to feed their family or pay the rent or whatever it might be, I'm not saying it to give you shit, but I would say, yeah, you probably shouldn't be prioritizing raising money for Reno. Get a new skill, raise money, like save more of your own money for that next time because it's coming again. This is not over. Like it's not like COVID's back in the box. Now we can go about our lives. If that's the way you think, and maybe that is the way a lot of people think, you're going to be in for a hell of a surprise because there's going to be a new round of mandates. There's going to be new biometric IDs. All this stuff is going to come in. And all I would say is maybe, just maybe prepare for that if your biggest problem of the next few weeks is trying to raise money for a trip to Reno.
Yeah. Side note, love that shirt. I watched your interview with Brett last night, and you did have that one on, but it wasn't yesterday.
It's not the same day, no. But I may wear this when I podcast often.
Right.
I just have a closet of these old school Lion shirts.
Right. Now, I think you can do multiple things, right? I think you can talk about what you're doing there, and you can be part of the Mises Caucus or Liberty Movement, whatever. How do you feel about people? But besides that, how do you feel about people? I know Pete's made these kind of comments, and I could more than likely I might be misunderstanding you, but he's saying, oh yeah, you hold into your principles, and you're going to be, you keep a hold of them as you're in the boxcar, getting sent away. Now you're specifically talking about holding to your principles for the mandates and all those things. I personally own my own business. My wife works for a big company, but we got her the religious exemption. I've helped people draft those kind of things themselves. So I think this is very important in doing exactly what you're. Side note too, not a real big fan. I've been a fan of Jason Stapleton, but some of the way the messaging has come in and, his kind of tone as well, I was like, ugh. But if you don't take away from people that actually say some good things, then you're the idiot. And one of the things he's been preaching, which is mobile income. So that for me, that's one thing I've really taken to heart. I'm like, I may not like how he messages it, but it doesn't mean his message is bad. And I don't necessarily, clip him off at the ankles for that. So I've been working myself to be very, whole family, we can just pick up and leave and do that. But back to the principles thing, you want to hold to the principles. I think that's the best part of the Liberty movement. And then you have, different states, Republicans, this and that. And I feel like I've moved away from a lot of their shenanigans, which is not about principle, but it's more about what the party wants. What's your view of that? And I don't even know if I made a cogent question there.
Yeah, maybe I did miss the question. Exactly what you're asking.
That's excellent. So
this is the Liberty Podcast review of the Liberty Podcast review.
Right. By the way, I didn't do much prep for this. So holding to your principles, you're making a sound case for it. I believe that's the reason to be a libertarian, as an example. A lot of the post-libertarians' views seem to be if you hold on to those, you're just gonna be put in a boxcar, blah blah blah. What's your take on that scenario? And am I misreading that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's like no. I mean, I think. Well, if you're going to have principles and you're going to be out there shouting about them and screaming about them, then you probably should be living by them at least. If you're the one shouting about them, if you're saying we got to stand by our principles, and then you're the one caving to the mandates, then yeah, I see that as a problem. But to address like the boxcar thing, yeah, like I don't want to speak for other people. I'll just speak for me. Sure. Yeah. I guess what I would like, I've made those boxcar jokes and stuff like that too. So like, I'll get in on that, I guess. I think the real idea is that if you're going to make some changes and you want to make changes for the better, whether they're for yourself or in your community or what have you, like, yes, it's great to have guiding principles that hopefully are actually guiding your actions, but the principles in and of themselves, just by having the principles in your mind in a philosophical way, I'm not going to say blankety blank in your head, I'm going to resist, but if you just have the principles and know you're right, that in and of itself doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything at all and doesn't move the needle anywhere, except maybe maybe you talking about it so much and saying the principles so much gets someone else to hear that, and maybe they go and learn the principles that hopefully they follow later. I guess. So to me, like I don't think I've personally rejected any principles of libertarianism, but I think I also view politics a little differently, like, and view how those principles could be applied differently. Like, for example, I'll just give a very cogent and example that everyone will understand that's very recent. The law in Florida that now means that an employer cannot ask for a vaccine, and they cannot mandate vaccines. If they do, they have to pay for testing. Right. That's a Ron DeSantis law. Does that violate the NAP? Probably, because every law, I guess, does, if you want to like boil it down to the very essence of the law. And yeah, you could say the existence of the government is violating the NAP in the first place. But it's that, I think, is just to look at that only through the lens of the non-aggression principle. I don't think you can really even do that, because it leaves the entire context out of the last 2 years, the entire context out of where this narrative that created vaccine mandates in the first place came from, the entire concept of why anyone felt the need to put this law into place. It's not in a bubble. It's not out of nowhere. It's a direct response to the COVID regime and the COVID narrative. And if me supporting that law to you, not you, Tyler, but the general you out there, makes me not libertarian, then I'm okay with you thinking that, I guess, is my point. So I don't care if people think that I'm not principled because of something I support. I don't think it's unprincipled to support it. So to me, I'm not rejecting any principles, because you can't copy and paste the NAP on these situations. You can use them as guiding principles, but I don't think you can just take NAP, copy, Control C, Control V on top of current situation X, and then say, okay, here's what you do. It's not even possible. So if that makes me going away from my principles to someone out there, then fine. I'm okay. I guess now I'm okay with other people thinking I'm abandoning my principles if that's what they want to think. I don't think that I am.
No, and by the way, those laws, I kind of tend to think of them sort of as a negative or positive rights thing. It's almost more of a negative of like trying to restrict the government of what they can do, which is more along the Bill of Rights type of idea. So I don't really have a big problem. My concern is always with these situations is that it's politics are cyclical. DeSantis isn't going to be God and King. Some crazy lefty is going to be there at some point, and then what are they going to do using the same law against you? So now you've advocated
also not force people to take vaccines. I mean,
right.
I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah. Well, then that one doesn't really bother me as much. But but you can say, oh, if the government has a right to do X and Y and Z to a business, da da da. Now, just to pull it back from a kind of a lawyer viewpoint, you took the federal mandates that went up to the Supreme Court. Having the federal government with police powers, even though Sotomayor was confused about that, is a much different prospect than the states. States can, I mean, this because the mandate was dismissed in the Fed. I'm like, it could still come here, me in California, because that's a little bit more of their power, and I don't like that a lot. So point is, I don't really have a problem with those. It's just some of the other ideas that maybe the governors or what have you that are put it in place, where are you grounding yourself, to kind of explain these things? Because if I'm not trying to be somewhat consistent, and this was my great revelation of coming over to the libertarian viewpoint, which was I could suddenly look at something like Grab 'em by the pussy and see that the two parties just decided to switch based on that. It's nothing to do with principle. It's now, Clinton had been banging the blue dress and Monica Lewinsky, and now it's the other, and they're both appalled, and it doesn't make any sense. So I felt, as Dave said, it's kind of like a superpower being a libertarian. Why do you not want to be a Superman anymore?
That was great phrasing. That was a fantastic setup. How can anybody say, no, I don't want to be a Superman? Of course I want to be a Superman.
I thought you were a comics guy.
Because, yes, you can still be a Superman. You can still do this all. That's what other people think. Like, there's a few things here, too, because, excuse me. I think part of what riled me up is so many people, you're not doing this now, but other people have definitely done this, where they respond to me as if I'm Pete Quinones, as if I am Tho Bishop, as if I'm Andrew, as if I'm Cyprian.
Right.
I'm not any of these people. All right. Yes, I've had these people on my show, just like I've had like a billion Mises Caucus people on my show. I'm not any of those people. So all I ask is just to respond to things I actually say, not the things other people that have been guests say. Like, respond to them then if you have issues with what they said. So I think like I get lumped in with all these various different strategies and all these things that people want to do. I only have my own thoughts. Now, some of those things they want to do make sense to me, like more so than others. So like I can see where all that comes from. Was there an original question here? I forgot.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Where do you base your principles at this point?
If
you're willing to take DeSantis now.
Superman, yeah. No, you can. The thing is, you never need to abandon your principles. I don't know where this idea came from. Like at least not from me. Like I've never said abandon your principles. If you want to have a superpower, the real superpower is if you can take your principles, bring them into the normie world of your community, the normie world where people actually just want to get things done, because the vast majority of people, your neighbors or whatever, they don't care about what libertarian philosophy is or how to get the right political. They're not reading all these books, Bautier, and they're not doing that. They want to like see how can they keep their kids safe? Like how can they keep their kids in a better situation? You know, how can they protect each other in their community? That's what they care about. So the superpower is to take your libertarian principles and then go bring them out to this community and not come across like a fucking lunatic. Actually just come across like another member of the community who has these principles, and maybe you're not beating them over the head with it, but you don't need to abandon your principles. You can go do what Tho's doing and go to these meetings. He's whipping up Rothbard for these people. So he's not abandoning any principles. He's bringing his principles to different people. Now, some people out there say, oh, Tho just says go GOP. Tho doesn't say just go GOP. Actually, if you follow Tho, most of the time I see him going after people. If it's not the Mises Caucus, it's usually other Republicans in his county that he's calling out for being so shitty. So like he's not abandoning principles. He's actually trying to bring his principles to more people and bring them somewhere that they can be effective and maybe actually apply them. So I just don't. I think that is the superpower, and we can still get involved in the real world. We don't need to cordon ourselves off into the Libertarian Party where at least we know everybody agrees with us. At least we all share the same principles. There's no superpower in that of scurrying off into your little corner where everyone agrees with you. The superpower is to take those principles into the place people don't agree with you and influence them and show them why your way is better. That would be the real superpower to me.
So that reminds me, but I kind of wanted to circle back, which was, did I just say that? Which is, you talk about going out in the community. I think the one thing Scott Horton has really helped me with was talking, his point, which I actually only hear from Dave. I don't even know if I've heard Scott say it, talking to the right from the right and talking to the left from the left. So I've really been able to help, kind of influence some of my friends. But if you're out in the community, just as you're talking, what do these people want to know? Well, you have a left neighbor, you have a right neighbor, and you can talk to them both if you've got that, at least the libertarian mindset, which is I don't want to go and argue with them. I want to persuade and help. And that's to me the still being able to kind of confer with your thing there. You said with Brett Lindell? It was a good interview, by the way.
Thank you.
He was talking about, and you just kind of mentioned it. So I just kind of want to get your point in this. He was saying, oh, you're in the libertarian community. It's just everyone agrees. That's why I go to the GOP community where people don't agree with me. But I'm like, okay, I kind of, but you can say the same if you want to go to the Democrat community and then everyone disagrees with you there. I mean, I guess it's persuasion. Sounds like to me, he's just more interested, and this is maybe the Tho and maybe Andrew and some of these other ones, it's a different pool that they want to be involved in. So are you saying that if you're staying in the libertarian community, are you just thinking that those people are just inoculated? They're not getting out much? Or kind of what's your critique there of, if I'm going to go to the GOP community, Tho seems to be doing what you want, and then the LP seems to not be doing what you want?
Well, yeah,
or the
just
MC.
to be clear,
the Mises Caucus.
Like I'm commenting on their strategies, I'll give my opinion, but those aren't really the things I'm personally pushing. I'll just comment on them because I'm asked, and because I have thoughts about what they're saying. So it's not like I'm not out there saying do what Tho does or do what anybody does, really. Really what I would say before any of that is you probably aren't even in a position to go to your local GOP or whatever meeting and be influential if you're not a pillar of the community in some way, or you at least are set in your family situation and you at least know that if a mandate comes in, you don't need to worry about how to feed your kids next week. So I would prioritize all of that stuff before even considering walking into any political anything, GOP, LP, whatever it may be. I think that for like what Brett was talking about, it's more about actually influencing your community and being able to influence your community. And I think it's a pretty valid point to say, independent community by community basis, I suppose, but there's probably very few communities where you're going to be influential as a member of the Libertarian Party or because you're a member of the Libertarian Party. Maybe you're also involved in libertarian stuff and then you go to this other thing, but that's not where like the power of the community is going to be. That's not where most regular people are going to be. You're going to find them either in your GOP meetings or your Democrat meetings. I would say if you're living in a place where the Democratic meetings are the ones that are going to be more influential, you're going to have a much bigger hill to climb, and it's going to be more difficult because I think after the last couple of years, it's hard to say there's not a bigger gap between Republicans and most between libertarians and most Democrats than there is with libertarians and most like local GOP people who, yeah, maybe they have views on immigration you don't fully agree with, or maybe they're a little too nationalist, but they probably don't want to kill you for not wearing a mask, and they probably don't want to stick a needle in your arm. So I think you will likely find more common ground there. But my thing is, don't do politics unless you're set and well off and don't have to worry about your family stuff, or at least are in a better direction with that. And then 2, if you are going to do it, try to at least do something that's going to be effective. And I'm just talking at the community level because I really don't have an opinion on doing anything at a higher level than that, because I think all of this national politics stuff is just kind of like, that's the sideshow, that's the circus, that's what have you. That's not what really is going to matter to your everyday life.
And I hate to invoke Jason Stapleton again, but if you're that LP person, and they're not going to take your influence, but if you have wealth, you probably are in that community because you're going to have some sort of power, right? So fuck that guy, and he keeps coming into my mind. But no, he's a good guy.
No, I mean, I'm glad you bring him up.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, like it's interesting now too, because I was actually starting, like I connected with Jason around 2015, 2016 when he started podcasting. We started talking. He wanted to do some ads for his show. I had him on my show. I was on his, vice versa, all that stuff. And I remember listening to him a lot. Even when he was like the Libertarian show and he was talking about libertarian politics, he would always talk about this mobile income thing. And I remember thinking like, yeah, he's probably pretty right. That would be, I was thinking more of like convenience. Like that would be nice. Yes, I could, if I had more mobile income, I could just travel the world more, which is something I used to do a lot more before I was working as much as I was in my late 30s. So I was like, yeah, that's cool. But I wasn't thinking at it in the necessarily, oh my God, this is life or death stuff. We should all have mobile income. That would be better so we can live kind of way. And now, looking back, like his message resonates even more now retroactively because how much did you not have to worry if you didn't rely on a company for your income in 2020, 2021? Right. I certainly would, my life would have been more stressful. I mean, more stressful, maybe more stressful in some ways. And when you own your own business, there is a little more stress on the fact that you have to do it and you don't have the safety net of someone else above you. And I am in a position in the sense that I had some mobile income and I've been able to grow that mobile income. I don't want to say easily because I'm still working at it, but I've been able to grow it more easily than if I hadn't developed all the skills from podcasting and all the connections from podcasting and worked my way into some other business stuff through that. But I think it's great advice no matter what, but it's like obviously necessary advice after the last 2 years where clearly if you weren't reliant on some major corporation for your income, you were in a much better position than anybody who was.
Yeah, completely. And side note for me, just, once again, owning my own business, then taking in, once again, I'm influenced by my decisions to be something in life. I'm religious as well. But you take on your libertarian values, so to speak. I mean, I just couldn't do that if I didn't live it. And actually it inspired me to, hey, if I take a vacation, besides some people doing some work in my office here, I'm not getting paid, right? So I am me, and I'm the business guy. I got to drive it, and for me, that it was actually more of a motivator. That's not for everybody. I understand. Okay, so we are going to try to help all these people get jobs and do what not. But some of this influence that you're talking about, Angela McArdle, as an example, down in LA, she helped draft a petition. There was an initiative about the vax mandates, and according to her, city council dropped it basically somewhat from the influence of the Libertarian Party. Now, if she was just Joe Schmo on the street, she might not have got much there, but she was LP Los Angeles County or whatever, so I think it was somewhat helpful. I mean, why do you? And I only say that because you're saying being part of the Libertarian Party or LP is a fruitless endeavor. Can you expand on what you mean by fruitless? And I mean, I cherry picked one because that's what I have. Example. Now, John Hody John, he says he's working with the prisons. So there's probably at least 2 examples out there. What about fruitless endeavors, and are those part of them?
It's a fair question. And like Angela's done work as, I guess, as a libertarian, as someone who is in the Libertarian Party and active in the Libertarian Party. She has also done she's also done tremendous work. I'm just let that go. But I would definitely question how much of her success of doing that is specifically because she was involved in the Libertarian Party, or specifically because Angela kicks ass and gets shit done and can organize like a mofo. So I think it's almost maybe in spite. Now maybe she had a lot of support from the people in the Libertarian Party that helped her with that, and I'm sure she did. So I think like my argument wouldn't be don't do these things, don't gather in groups, don't network with each other, but the fact of what she did there, and like, that has nothing to do with taking over the Libertarian Party or like having a Mises caucus or any of this stuff. To me, that's completely unrelated. And I do wonder like how much she would be able to do if she was doing the exact same thing, but wasn't in the Libertarian Party. How different would it be? I don't know if it'd be more or less, but I question how much of that is because she's in the Libertarian Party versus otherwise. But maybe she, okay. I don't know if she specifically said that it's because of that or not. Maybe she did. Is that what you're saying? I didn't hear her say that.
We'll let her speak on that one. I don't want to throw things out there too much. So
yeah, but I mean, she's a great example of people getting work done in their community. And I've also always said this whole time, do whatever works for you in your community. So I won't even argue. If she said like I couldn't have done this without the Libertarian support and without my Mises caucus, I won't argue with it because my argument is just do what works for you locally. And if that did work and is working locally, then you won't hear an argument from me.
Well, I guess my question and for her might have been, was the GOP doing that? So, and look, and I only bring it back to that because politics are out there. You're going to be involved. I think I mentioned, if you're not involved in politics. The GOP might have been doing it
if she was in the GOP, just like the Libertarian Party might not have been doing it if she wasn't in the Libertarian Party. So I don't know. But
then does it really matter which party does it? Or
that's kind of what I'm saying.
Okay. So we got there. So I don't get my 50 Bitcoin or $50 with a Bitcoin. Pete could have gone much higher. I wish he would have done it in percentage, like 0.0 all the way out.
Yeah. 0.00025 Bitcoin, whatever that may be.
I had a question for you here. Flags behind podcasters, is that cool or is that like a hostage video? Marc Clair.
I think it's like a hostage video. Yeah, I think it's pretty weird.
I'm glad we're on that together.
No matter what the flag, really.
Right. What else do we have here? What podcast do you listen to?
What podcast do I listen to?
Yeah.
Are we talking libertarian or otherwise?
No, anything.
Let's see. Why don't we just do this instead of making me guess? I'll just open my podcast app. I listen to, Post Wrestling. That's my wrestling podcast that I listen to. I really like the guys at Post Wrestling.
Is that like old school wrestling?
No, it's actually new school. They actually do reviews of current wrestling shows, like post shows. Basically, they do the post shows of like WWE Raw, WWE SmackDown, AEW Dynamite, and I don't really have the time always to watch all the wrestling that I want to watch, which is good because I might be wasting too much time then.
Well, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I'm setting you up here.
I know where all this is going. That's okay. I will say in the Liberty world, I am a pretty big listener of both Pete Quinones and Buck Johnson. They are doing a lot of what I like to hear. And of course, I listen to every episode of my Lions of Liberty cohorts, Brian McWilliams on Mean Age Daydream, John Odermatt on Finding Freedom. Always enjoy their work. So
solid work, yeah.
And I listen to the Weird Science Comics podcast too. Love those guys. And also THC, the Higher Side Chats. I'm a big Higher Side Chats fan. That sums up my regular listens, I'd say, pretty well.
I like it.
It's a lot of time, a lot of hours there.
I did not hear Liberty podcast review in there, Libertarian podcast review, but we're getting you on board.
That's because I watch you on YouTube, so you're not on my podcast.
Well, that's kind of the same idea.
There you go.
I appreciate that. Whether you do or not, that's fine if you lie in here. Should we get to Jack Lloyd's question? Mac Floyd. Mac Floyd. Sure. So he, you want me to, I'll just read this out here, and if that's okay. I felt some of it wasn't okay. Jack Lloyd said he never counter-argued my point about attention seeking. And by the way, this whole thing seems to be about attention seeking. So he just told me off and used personal indignation as his response. Also, the idea that I'm promoting my various projects. Yeah, you did. He's done on his channel. Do I feel like I want to read this whole thing? Everyone could go to the last episode and take a look at it. It's just basically, what do you think from that first sentence there?
I mean, Jack's main thing was like that, I was just, this is what bothers me, I guess. Okay. Yeah, I guess it's fair to say, like, I suppose now this thing like blew up into a thing and became a thing like a million people were commenting on. And I'll be honest, that episode did pretty well. And how said, I got more attention and my show got more attention. So, okay, fair enough. But the reason that I did it was not some weird, like, master plan to draw more viewers. I don't need to draw like people to the podcast. Like, I mean, of course, everyone needs to grow their podcast and get people, but that's like most people in the Mises Caucus either know my show or know who I am, or like maybe, or have heard of it and don't care to listen, or whatever it may be. Like what bothers me is the idea of the motive and the idea that people can get into my head and know how I'm thinking. Like the inclination was that I had this master plan to get more podcast viewers. So the way to do it was to go into the Mises Caucus group and get people so angry. But that's not what I did, and that's not my approach at all. Again, if you read my original post, all I was saying was, hey, I want to give these thoughts in a more laid out way and respond to your comments and criticisms. I don't think I said anything insane in that post. And the reaction to the sane thing I thought I said, the insane reactions to that thing are what drove me to go a little insane and like do my own brand of like, fuck off guys thing. But just the idea that I'm doing this out of like some crazy look, I can have Dave Smith on every week and get better numbers than if I criticize the Mises Caucus. Doing pro Mises Caucus stuff has done very well for us when we've done stuff like that. So I just it's probably different listeners I'll end up getting from like making these kind of shifts. But the idea that I'm just like, that I guess what bothers me is the implication that I don't actually give a shit about people or something. Like maybe Jack's projecting. Maybe he does everything just for attention and to draw to his brands and draw to his music videos or whatever it may be. Maybe he's projecting how he sees things, but that's not how I see things. I got involved in the Ron Paul liberty movement because I was passionate about what he was talking about. And I've come to know a lot of these people over the last 10 years, and I actually care about them. And I actually don't want to see them have to roll up their sleeves and get a jab to keep their job and feed their family. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm talking about this stuff. And the idea of just doing podcast views off because it's bullshit, it's mind reading, and it's poor mind reading.
So you were breaking up a bit there. The only thing I'm going to, which is
I'm
perfect.
out of sync, huh? Yeah.
It's perfect though, because then I'm just going to edit random words in there that'll make you sound like a racist pig. He goes on to say here, you don't see me going into Facebook groups of organizations I don't agree with and telling them that they are wrong and they should come support my project. That would be rude. So when Marcus is staying in the LPMC group while low-key hating on them, that's rude. And yes, it is attention seeking for the purpose of driving people to his podcast. So I just want to say, first of all, I don't think attention seeking is a problem, but I think the word attention seeking is not meant at all to be a constructive. So if he wanted to say you're promoting him, whatever promotion, or you're doing this for that, that's one thing. But attention seeking, and I think in this context is actually negative. I'm in Facebook groups I don't agree with, but I'm in their groups. I mean, then kick me out for some reason, and you can say what you want. I thought it was a fine thing to defend yourself for liking a tweet. So I don't have a really problem with that. I don't even have a problem with Jack, but I did find it interesting. Look, he can promote his show all he wants. That's all I see from him really on his channels. And maybe I'm not following the right ones. And I don't think of badly about that. That's just
about your own stuff. Like how else are people going to know about it?
I'm not good at it.
Anybody for promoting. Yeah, you should probably take some lessons from Jack on promoting.
Right.
You need more food pictures.
So I would also say though too, I don't remember him doing the thing. It was more like a declarative statement. You're attention seeking. He didn't say you're attention seeking because, and then give you some concrete definition and example of what that is. So for you not to answer that, I didn't really have a problem with it either.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just kind of blew off the comment because I thought it was stupid. So like, right. I mean, yeah, I suppose in some sense I'm attention seeking because of course I do want people to listen to my podcast. It's just the malintent that was implied with it really annoyed me because there's the idea that I'm doing this to like make a ton of money is just so goddamn bonkers. There's so many things I do with my time that can make me money and that do make me money. This is not really one of them. I mean, we do have an income from the podcast. Pretty much all of it goes back into the podcast. We're not like cutting checks from this thing right now. So it seems so silly to think that this is all some master plan to gain more money, or like, it's just so silly, because there's a million other things I can do with my time that do make me money directly. And I wouldn't need to do this just for the hell of it. I'm doing this and saying this stuff, knowing it will rub some people the wrong way, but I'm not trying to reach everybody necessarily. I'm trying to reach some people that think, oh, this does apply to me. Oh, maybe I should be doing some things differently.
Okay, so I'm probably going to get accused of just siding with you, fanboying a little bit. It's a little bit, but I don't think this is a major issue that we need to be concerned about. And I think I actually get Jack's. If you're super into the LPMC and you're knocking it, and I think it comes from a place of him knowing that you have credibility, like I've talked about before. It is more so people are ready to strike out against that. So I don't have a problem necessarily with him doing that.
One thing I want to address from the Jack comment is when he said hating on, and that's something that bothers me too, because other people have said stuff like this, like talking shit to, or like, dude, I'm not talking shit. Like that is such a dumb thing to say, or hating on. Hating on would be if I said the Mises Caucus are a bunch of losers and a bunch of morons and they're idiots, and like just listed a bunch of like negative things about them. I'm not hating on anybody. I'm trying to say that I don't think you're all necessarily taking the best strategy. It's not a good political strategy, and it's definitely a poor life strategy, much more so being my message, if you don't have XYZ things put into place. And you're also painting a target on yourselves at the same time. So it's like you're only bringing negativity upon yourself by your involvement in the Libertarian Party and the Mises Caucus. You're not going to bring yourself any kind. And what I worry about is like people like me in their 20s. I'm not in my 20s, but I was. Got all wrapped up in this Ron Paul. I actually convinced myself Ron Paul could be president at one point. How fucking silly is that? There's going to be a lot of people, even though Dave is saying, like, I know I'm not going to win. Trust me, a lot of people are going to convince themselves Dave Smith can be president and then start giving all their damn money to it and putting their whole life in it. And I think a lot of those people shouldn't be prioritizing that. And they will get wrapped up in it because it will feel good to take over the LP. And it will feel good to get in some shots on Anthony Fauci on CNN or whatever shows he's going to appear on that he couldn't appear on before for some reason, even though he's appearing on them all the time now. Whatever. I just think that, but none of this is me hating on anybody. All right, it's trying to give you my perspective on and my perspective, I think, as you've mentioned, should have some kind of credibility, because not just because I've been a podcaster in this space for 8 years, but before that, because I've lived the life of a Ron Paul activist. I've been involved in this for 20 years. So I've gone through my 20s and my 30s in this whole thing, and all I'm relating is my own personal experience and things. And I'm talking to the man in the mirror, and I would have done some things a lot differently. Obviously, it's like you can reimagine things, like everything you do in your life brings me to the moment I'm in today. So whatever. But I wish someone had maybe slapped me in the face in my 20s and told me, I wish if only I found Jason Stapleton when I was 19 and he told me about the mobile income. I just like I wish I bought that $19 Bitcoin. I wish someone was around to tell me, not necessarily. Well, I do wish they told me to buy the Bitcoin as well, actually. But point being, I wish there was someone I respected and maybe even looked up to that maybe told me that. And I do think that, I hope anyway, that I do have more credibility due to my track record here.
I think if you mention Man in the Mirror one more time, I will slap you. That's Michael Jackson. So I'd mentioned kind of the atheist or evangelical approach you were taking before. I didn't, and I don't know if you understood that, but we all have. There's the atheists out there that is just, they got nothing better to do than just harp on the religious person, and it's a little annoying because nothing's going to happen with that, right? And then there's the evangelical person that's out doing outreach, and they're trying to convince, atheists or other denominations to come to them. And at first, I thought you were the annoying atheist on your podcast, just pushing against the LPMC, and you guys are a bunch of losers. And then I had to think about it and go, well, maybe it's the other way. But then I saw you tweeting online, and that's definitely the atheist point of view, because you didn't seem very forgiving afterwards. No, I'm just kidding about that.
Maybe I could be both.
Yeah, well, it can be. I could be an awful Christian.
I mean, I think like putting your faith in the Libertarian Party or in the Mises Caucus is probably more ridiculous than putting your faith in the spaghetti monster, if we're going to go the atheist angle. Right. But I actually would see. There's Twitter, and then there's Twitter. I'm probably more because I am just, it's Twitter. So I'm going to say things that are more like a little more bombastic, a little more bomb throwing, a little more whatever, because that's kind of the nature of Twitter.
Right.
But I think in my actual mission of what I'm trying to do overall is probably more of the evangelical. I am trying to show some people the light, so to speak. And I, if you'll wonder why I'm encouraged to do this, even while I get a bunch of shit online and a bunch of angry Facebook comments, it's because I get a lot of great feedback privately from people that say, this is what I really needed to hear. I got one of the most amazing emails I ever got in my life the other week, from somebody who's, I read a bunch of emails on the end of my last podcast. So, but, so one of them really did affect me a lot. Like, and yeah, so that's what I'm doing it for. It's if I can slap a couple people into, into making some changes in their life, or even if it's just making an extra therapy appointment, or taking those extra 4 hours a week and learning a new skill so they can have some more mobile income, then mission accomplished. So I'm happy to do that. And if along the way some people don't like that I'm criticizing a chosen path that they've taken and that they see that as hate, then that's on them, because I'm not dishing any hate here, except maybe on Twitter sometimes.
What about importance of community, and that those involved in the LP or LPMC actually get some of that? Now, I'm not going to give too many things away, but there's a structure behind the scenes where we can all communicate. There's even job boards. There's outreach, that kind of thing, which I think personally, if you take it and you say, hey, this is a free Jason Stapleton type of community, you could almost structure yourself and find your connections, right? If I want to move out to, a different state or something, I've got an immediate list of people I could connect with. So, you have the Free State Project, you have Freedom Cells, you have Jason's network. Tom Woods has got something going on. I didn't subscribe to that one. But what is your take on whether those in the LPMC, if they can use that in a fruitful manner? And we don't know necessarily how everyone is utilizing that, but they still may not be able to pay their way to Reno, which I understand is a problem. But what do you think about that community and the importance of that they can offer?
I think it's the best argument for the whole thing in the first place, to be honest. If you've built a community of support and people, and it can help people when they're in need, and it's helped people get jobs. I've heard other people say some similar things. That's the absolute best argument that anyone can make for it. And I'm not going to argue with that aspect of it. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, it sucks that you did it in the LP, but okay, like, no, fine, that's great. But I would really question how much of that has anything at all to do with taking over the Libertarian Party, which is where all the money, most, not all, but a vast majority of the money and the push and the effort and the time is gone into. And I've had people in the Mises Caucus confirm this to me, so I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here, that is the primary focus of everything right now. Maybe that changes after Reno, and then we really do the local community stuff. To me, it's like, if 70% of the time and money and effort is going to take over the LP, boy, how much better could that be spent, like focusing on the aspect you're talking about, on actually building up the community. And so I would just question why that needs to be connected to this Mises Caucus strategy, but I'm not going to argue against that. I mean, if that's what people are getting out of it, fantastic. Like, I'm not going to say don't get that out of it.
So here would be my, not counter to that, but addendum in a sense, which is, I think a lot of the people in there, you are trying to say, hey, get out, improve your life, blah, blah, blah. If they left the LPMC, I don't think to improve their lives, if they're leaving to do that, and that's their maybe that'll happen. I just don't think a lot of people are going to be listening to that regardless.
I'm not even telling people leave the LPMC. Like, if you want to pay dues to that organization and you think that brings you fruit through the community, and you think your contribution to that community, bears benefits, then do it. I mean, it's more about, like, I don't want to people wasting time for false hope and putting all of their time and energy and basically putting all their cards on, if we just take over the LP, everything's going to be great and we're going to turn this thing around, while ignoring things they could be doing and should be doing in their real lives to not have to roll up the damn sleeve again.
Yeah,
which is someone pointed out it's kind of a weird thing to use as a critique, because, like, traditionally rolling up your sleeves is like, right, getting the work done. So maybe I need to work on the marketing there, but I don't know. Or maybe it works both ways.
For the LP, it might just be pull up your underpants. I don't know.
Pull up your panties.
Was there anything else you wanted to clarify before we just kind of devolve into me asking you things like?
Oh, we haven't devolved yet.
what isn't a waste of time, Mark? You have 2 podcasts.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, okay.
You know what's coming. I mean, it's easy. Yeah. And I'm the same. I have
the whole time.
I have a podcast. I have, life outside. I mean, I try to, exercise and do things. We all kind of need some of this. Rothbirdian. I don't know if Rothbirdian. I think that's her name. She wrote 2 blog posts.
I don't think it's her name, but it is her pseudonym.
No, that's
It'd be really funny if it was her birth certificate. It says Rothbirdian. That's it.
That's her God-given name. I'm pretty sure of it.
Rothbard parents.
2 blog posts that I was reading. And one of them was the last thing you said. Do you hate the state
I wanted
or
to do this
yourself?
on your show because I knew you would know all the little side tangents that went on, and yeah, that's why you don't get the Stapletons of the world. Let me tell you, he's not reading Rothbirdian blog posts.
No, he's not. By the way, Jason, if you needed a family law attorney in California, contact me. Anyway, go ahead. That was maybe a low blow. So Mark, she wrote about, do you hate the state of yourself? And I thought she was actually had some good critique. It wasn't a critique so much, almost kind of like an agreement with you. And now you've distracted me to even know what I'm talking about or the question I was going to ask. But do you hate the state or yourself? What was your meaning of that tweet?
It was actually inspired by what this one email that I read, and this guy that said, like, who's just kind of like telling him what he had to hear, and he said that he had to ask himself, one day, like, how can I? What did he say exactly? He said, like, how can I fight the state if I hate myself? Like, and that just really resonated with me. Like, how much of our anger towards the state, how much effort and time and mental energy, and I'm not precluding myself from this at all, over the years are people putting into hating the state, hating everything the government's done. Well, what if you took that same energy and I'm not going to psychoanalyze everybody out there, but if you're expressing hate all the time and you're always putting hate for a state out there, it's not actually good for your soul at all. It's and this is a little esoteric type stuff, but I don't think it's really good to be putting hate towards anything. I've always had a problem with the hate the state mentality, because what is the state? The state's your neighbors, the state's your family and friends whose bad ideas has formed into what we call the state. So I don't like the idea of hating the state anyway, but I kind of said that in response to what this email said, where he said, like, how could I be so against the state if I don't even love myself? And I think that's something that really struck with me, and I'm sure it's something that could apply to a lot of people. Look, there's things I don't love about myself, and in the last couple of years, I've put more time into things I didn't love about myself. Like I had a little more of a belly. I still have a little more of a belly than I'd like, but I put more time into my health, put more time into doing things that make me love myself more. And when you do that, you're going to be a more productive person. You're going to do better in life. You're going to meet that girl, more likely meet that girl and have that family or whatever it may be. And doing those things, loving yourself and improving your life that way, is going to bring more liberty to your life than hating the state ever could and being angry at the state ever could. So it's something that resonated with Rothbirdian, and it seems to have resonated with other people. But I think it's something we could all use a little introspection. Again, myself completely included here. So that's why I say things like that, because it's something that kind of popped into my mind when I read that email. And when I Twitter, I do 2 things. I either put something out that I think will get people thinking in a certain way, or I just throw a bomb, because it's sometimes you can throw a bomb.
So with that, what I'm remembering now, kind of my question with her, which is, you've got other things that are going on in her life, and she's saying in her post that she has her boyfriend and she's met him through this movement or what aren't. Maybe I'm misunderstanding some of it, but it was that she goes out and does things for Jeremy Kauffman. And part of that is to her, she feels like that's enabling her to get better. Maybe these participation in these third party groups, you're saying improving yourself. Do you see that I'm not always trying to defend, I'm just having a conversation about this, but it seems like to me, some of these, you could actually be involved in some of these parties and actually improve yourself. I don't know. Is that a fruitless opinion?
Fruitless opinions. That should be the name of a podcast that you and I host.
Right. This episode, honestly.
Like, if people get something of anything, I'm not going to be upset they did that thing, but it doesn't make that original thing necessarily a wise use of time in the grand scope. I have full confidence that Angela McArdle could have gotten the same thing done. Maybe she disagrees. Maybe I'm wrong. Like, I'm not behind the scenes, so I could be totally wrong. I have full confidence that Angela could have organized with other like-minded people to get Like, I don't think it's because she's in the Libertarian Party that she brought that to the city council. She could have done that and brought that to the city council and organized a bunch of people. Now, maybe she's more connected to those people that helped her because of the Libertarian Party involvement. And that's fair. That's a totally fair thing. And there may be people that, business opportunities or connections that people make that they end up getting through the Libertarian Party efforts. And I think all that stuff is positive, and I'm not angry about anything really, but, whatever, here's a good analogy, maybe, even though analogies are pretty much never good, but okay, I don't, in my hindsight, I can look back and say, I probably didn't need to spend the money I spent on college. Like, I can really say I didn't, because I mean, in my industry, in my real life industry, I guess, in TV production world, I'd say about half the people I end up working with or interacting with that do something around what I do or similar to what I do have college degrees or did have a degree in TV and film like I do. The other half didn't go to college and just ended up working in TV somehow and learned everything on the job. And we're doing the same shit, only they didn't spend the 40 or 50 grand that I spent and spend the 10 years paying that off. So I can look back and say, it's very obvious to me now, getting a 4-year degree, at least for what I do. If you're going to be a lawyer and need to go to law school or I realize there's some people that do need to get that bachelor degree and to advance to something else. But I can easily say it would make no sense to go back and tell my younger self, yes, go do this 4-year degree. That was totally worth it. That was a better use of time. Don't start working at 18. Delay that. Go party for 4 years. That's the right thing to do. And that would be terrible advice. But at the same time, I met some of my best friends there. Brian and John are my business partners in Lions Liberty. We probably wouldn't have Lions Liberty if we didn't all meet in college. So it's I don't want to rewrite history because history got me where I am. But that doesn't make the initial thing a good use of time. It doesn't make it any smarter to someone that's going into it now. So I won't deny any benefit that people have gotten connecting with people, making lifelong friends, lifelong connections that they happen to have gotten through working in the Libertarian Party or through being a member of the Mises Caucus. But that doesn't make it a smart thing in and of itself, even if you happen to get a bunch of other benefits from it. Just like me going to college and spending all that money for a 4-year degree wasn't a smart thing. That doesn't mean I want to take back any of the amazing connections that I made along the way. I don't know.
I think there was a study out about people that go to Harvard or Yale, and their success was more attributed to going there and either getting that degree or the connections. And yeah, I have 4 kids, 2 in college, and I tell my son, hey, maybe you don't need to get this degree, but since he's going to nursing and you can't just put catheters in at the truck stop, it's probably best that you go there and get that.
For him, he probably does.
Yeah, he might be doing that on his own. So that's just okay. So I think we're there. The point is, we're not going to probably totally agree, but I think for me, you've got to think about yourself, and so I appreciate you coming on here and pushing these issues. And for me, I've got to think about what I'm doing. Am I wasting too much time? I mean, I'm doing a podcast. I go and screw off and do other things, but sometimes you need some mental vacations, and so this is what you do. And me personally, I'm actually trying to make connections and do some things in the Libertarian Party. So who knows? It may be totally useless for me, and I'll look back and say that young old Mark was quite the man. Unless you have anything left to there, I thought I'd just ask you a few other quick questions about your podcast. Is that fine?
No, I guess just to address the overall wasting time, because other people have brought this up to me too. They said well, I don't know, watching wrestling probably isn't a productive use of time or this or that, which is kind of fair. All right. I'll boogie with you here, because I probably do, even right now, current version of me proselytizing out here, probably do waste too much time on some things, probably. But like you said, we do need leisure time in a sense too, to maintain sanity. I have to have some things that are non-libertarian politics, or or I'll start hating libertarian stuff and I won't want to do this at all. So like my comic book podcast, which actually I take more money from than I do with Lions Liberty, even though it only has a couple hundred listeners, we've been able to monetize it pretty well. Wow. So I wouldn't say those are I don't make a ton of money off it, but I do make money off it and I enjoy doing it. So it's something I really like doing that I get to make some money on also. And this is why I also do podcast consulting, because I help people learn how they can grow and monetize their podcasts, even on a really small budget. And I really enjoy doing that. So some of my wastes of time, like reading comics or what have you, or podcasting, I've been able to turn those into things that do make me money too, which is nice. And I've even thought, Buck Johnson wants to do a wrestling podcast with me someday. It's tempting in a way, and I'm sure I can monetize it pretty quickly. but it's also the one area of my life I don't podcast about. It's like the one, I'm like, maybe I need to like one thing that just stays sacred that I just can tweet about and talk to friends about and not actually like think about. Because now like I can't even, just like I can't see a libertarian conversation and like not think about, oh, how can I do a podcast about this? I can't like see a comic thing and not think about, well, maybe I could do like some kind of podcast about this. So I don't want to do that to something else. But the point being, yeah, we can all, including myself, use a good retrospect on how we're using all our time. And I have, over the last 6 or 7 months, put a huge part of my time into developing skills, into making connections, into building out more of my mobile income. My mobile income is enough to pay rent in most U.S. cities right now. It's more than enough to pay rent here in Mexico. So my mobile income does cover our rent. I need to be making more doing it. Yep, sure. But at the same time, because of all the years of doing this and because of a little bit of listening to Jason, to be honest, like I started to think more and more about that, so that when the time did come that it came to crunch time for me, I knew that I wasn't going to start at 0 a month. I was going to start at something, and I was going to build from that something. And here I am 7 months later, and I haven't rolled up my sleeve. Well, I have rolled up the sleeve. I'm getting to work, but I haven't rolled up my sleeve to a mandate that I very easily could have absolutely justified doing for my family. But to me, doing that long-term is a worse example for my family, because I don't want to tell my family, yeah, sometimes you do give up your bodily autonomy. You know, if you feel like you're in a pinch, then you do. That's not the message I want to send. And that's not the message that I think a lot of people that didn't want to send either. So I would like some people that if they are in that position and those same people are spending a lot of time on a third-party effort or any political effort, really, is my point, then maybe they could also use some reevaluation of how they're spending some time. That's all. And I don't reclude me or you from any of that.
It was interesting. You make a comment about, so I've had a podcast since 2016. It's cycling. Okay. I used to be professional cycling, and it kind of ruined my viewing of bike racing, which is you're only doing it and you're like thinking of things. So now I listen to podcasts, and I remember you with Dave and even Pete, and I was like, oh, I'd love to talk to Mark about this. And I was like, why would I talk about this stupid stuff? It just keeps rehashing the same old, and here we are. We did a whole podcast. Podcasts are almost ruined for me, because every time I listen, I'm like, this is what I'd like to say to this person, or I'm jealous that this person had this person on. What are some of your tips or tricks, since you're doing this for, you said the business of having people
doing it for the attention, doing it for the attention.
Oh, well, attention and money. It sounds like you're promoting, you're teaching that. For one of the best things I've done is to try to streamline so that I can not spend my time in production. Do you have tips and tricks for people out there that they want to get into podcasting and they can help themselves?
You mean in terms of like how?
What's your number one tip for someone that's already established?
It's already established. Like they already have the podcast. Oh, that's already established. I mean, I would say like as you do get some income from your podcast, it's probably going to behoove you to take some of the things you do. And I'm my own worst critic on this, because I still edit my own podcast, and I edit my interviews pretty, not like super intensely, but I don't just cut it and paste it. Like I take out little gaps, like 2 or 3 second gaps in silence and stuff like that, because I want to polish it up a little bit. But like you should try to find more. I'm talking to myself. I'm not going to say it, man. And I'm not going to say it. But you should try to offload some of the busy work that you do onto other people as you build up your income, because that will allow you to do the things that you really do best, which hopefully is like hosting your podcast and promoting your podcast, or maybe guesting on other shows to promote the podcast, whatever it may be. The more you can free yourself up to do the stuff you love doing, the better things are going to turn out for you in the long term. But I'm the worst at this, because I still edit my own podcast, not because I can't, not because we can't. I just like to do it. So that's why. And I'm so anal that I tried a couple different editors, and I would find like I'm taking such extensive notes for these editors sometimes of what things I want them to change. I'm like, no, it's a bit better if I just do it, because only my brain knows how I want a podcast to be edited. It's like I can't even write a manual about it.
I'm with you on that, and then you're not paying attention to the questions you're asking or the interaction with your guest, and you're making notes down there. So good for you. Okay, Mark, I really appreciate you coming on. I mean, this is a dream come true for me. I can't even express how exciting it's been. So
I finally retired. You've done the ultimate podcast review.
Thanks, everybody. Libertarian podcast review. We got the Watcher, the babyface Watcher, Marc Clair. Go check out Lions of Liberty, of course, and my episode 16. Oh, before we go out here, I'm doing a Kill Tony knockoff show. Okay, we do it about once a month. We're doing it on the 25th. So check me out on Twitter. And if you want to come on, you come on for a minute, you say something, liberty, whatever you want to say, and then we interview for you a little bit. So that's my thing. If anybody out there wants to join up. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Tyler.
Okay, I'm leaving now. Bye, guys.
But she's back.
Now.
Chick-fil-A is completely overrated. It's not that good. I prefer Zaxby's. I prefer Popeyes.
Takes a tough man to make a tender forecast, Nick. And I guess that's me. Keep fucking that chicken.
Should I vote for Dick Cheney on the Libertarian Party? Do I have an obligation to vote for Dick Cheney?
I would say so.
Yes.
Did it work for those people?
No, it never does. I mean, these people somehow delude themselves into thinking it might, but it might work for us.
That one dude was like, not a podcast. I can't find it anywhere. And they don't have video.
Oh, yeah, Peter Janke. Yeah.
Yeah, I blocked him.
I'll do it. If he unblocks me,
He'll buy your shirt if you unblock him, Bert.
He's a wigger.
Yeah, nothing cooler than a 49-year-old wigger. I just started live streaming. Cut me some slack. I'm pretty high tech for a boomer. But anyways,
boomer.